The Soviet leaders still held ultimate control in their hands, but their grasp was faltering. Three general secretaries were buried in quick succession. A leader from a new generation took over, and Mikhail Gorbachev seemed to understand the frustrations of the people on the streets.
Поэтому вот давайте двигать сильнее страну, экономику. Будем двигать экономику, будет крепкая оборона и будем продолжать рост материального благосостояния. Жилье будем, да, все будем делать.
Держитесь ближе к народу, мы никогда вас не подведем.
Ну куда ж ближе? Спасибо. Кубанский хлеб, я знаю, что такое хлеб.
He was a leader with a new style, who declared the socialist world could only be transformed with the full participation of the people.
Хотим, чтобы так у нас шло в стране, чтобы люди наши активно принимали участие во всех делах, которые касаются и коллектива, и страны.
A new policy of openness, or glasnost, allowed Soviets to read books and see films that had previously been censored. Director Enver Shengelai had foreseen the collapse of the whole Soviet system in a comedy about a publishing house that had come to a halt.
Ты возьмешь у Бори, когда он прочтет. На, Боря, твой.
Что это? Положи туда.
Ходи, ходи.
Нет, пусть у меня будет.
После тебя я читаю.
Хорошо.
Конем ходи.
Не подсказывай. Ребята, игра на интерес идет.
И дом начинает...
And then the building begins to collapse. You'll see it here. Because the system itself was collapsing. We could not go on in that state of paralysis.
Застойного состояния.
Освободите помещение! Немедленно! Организованно!
I was very lucky. Gorbachev saw the film and they told me later he liked it very much. He said it caught the tragedy of our situation perfectly. He said we have to do something before the roof falls in.
Television viewers were transfixed by programs which told for the first time how people really lived.
Настолько сел у нас грибок, видите, это еще сравнительно очень хорошо. А канализация у нас в туалете может замерзнуть, так как у нас на кухне не отопляется, там нужно топить печку, а печи не топят. Они вот-вот рухнут, вот печка. Замазываем, подмазываем. Говорят, что у нас еще более-менее нормальные условия, живут хуже.
Yevgeny Mahayev, a Moscow fishmonger, was taken aback at all this frankness.
It really was a shock. In the past, we'd always told jokes among ourselves, and we laughed about all the things that were wrong and we didn't like. But we did it among friends, and now suddenly here it all was on TV.
Further Gorbachev reforms began challenging the state's total control over the economy. Yevgeny Mahayev, who for 20 years had worked in this large state-run food shop, took the opportunities Gorbachev presented.
Gorbachev said, "Come on, wake up, make some money, organize your own cooperatives." It was good. I even set up my own little business. I liked it because I was responsible. I was feeding my family myself. I was free of the state. I was independent.
But in many places, political freedom was the major goal. All across the Soviet Union, long-suppressed nationalism burst into the open. Soon the Gorbachev revolution was running out of control. In Eastern Europe, the party had been kept in power by Moscow's past willingness to send in the tanks. When Gorbachev removed that threat, the first cracks appeared. In Hungary, new leaders began to dismantle the old political system, even allowing people to take down sections of the Iron Curtain. In Poland, Solidarity, whose popular support had never been destroyed, forced the government to hold free elections. They swept to power. But a swathe of old-style regimes, from Romania to East Germany, still seemed firmly in charge. In Berlin, the East German leadership celebrated 40 years of communism as if nothing had changed. Most East Germans, like Barbel Reinke, knew it had.
People were quieter. Ruhiger. Ich sag's einfach mal, ruhiger.
Previously, you would always celebrate the 7th of October, and you'd be forced to be cheerful. But that day, there was something in the air.
The crowds chanted for the visiting Gorbachev, not for their own die-hard leaders.
Gorbachev was our great hope. Even down here in my street, someone had sprayed Gorbachev on the wall. We had such hopes of him.
Just a couple of streets from the official pageantry, a counter-demonstration was broken up by the police.
In the Schönhauser Allee, people were being beaten. Plainclothes police took truncheons out of their pockets and beat up those youngsters. I thought, finally, I can do something. I can stand up and support these people. I don't have to sit around at home. Now I can do something.
Despite the police tactics that night, the demonstrations spread. People who for years had passively accepted the status quo felt brave enough to take a stand. And with the opposition swelling, the party was driven into making hurried concessions.
Just after 7 p.m., I was having my dinner in our canteen. We had a black and white television, and I watched the press conference on it.
The party had decided to let people travel to the West, but the spokesman failed to announce that the visas needed would only be issued the next morning.
Das tritt nach meiner Kenntnis ist das sofort. Unverzüglich.
When he turned the bit of paper and said something like, "As I understand it, immediately," I thought, immediately? That's impossible. He's talking nonsense.
Here at home, I screamed so loud, even though I was all alone. I screamed, "The wall is open."
As thousands made their way to the west, Bärbel Reinke set out for the Brandenburg Gate. On a night of confusion, she found herself blocked by a line of border guards.
Ich bitte Sie. An wen denn? Wer ist zuständig, bitte? Zeigen Sie mir den, wenn ich mich an ihn... Wir wissen, wie lange wir gewartet haben.
I became terribly frightened and thought they'd tricked us again.
Ich kann nicht mehr! Ich habe mir einmal in meinem Leben gewünscht, durch dieses Brandenburger Tor zu gehen. Und zwar in den anderen Teil zu gucken. Ich war noch nie da drüben.
Ich fühlte mich wirklich mit ihm als ein Block stehen.
I felt he was a block. I thought, never again will someone say, "You can't go through here. You're not allowed to go there. You're not allowed to do that. No more. I'm going through."
Bärbel achieved her ambition. Both East and West Berlin exploded in joy.
Das war für mich so unfassbar. Ich muss es ehrlich sagen, mein Mann hatte keine Lust mehr noch mitzukommen. Ich sage, lass uns einmal an so einem historischen Tag einmal mit dabei sein.
Die hat mich angerufen nach dem Bier. Das ist ein wunderschöner Tag.
We talked later that night. Someone said, that's it. That's the end of the GDR.
Die Verabschiedung der DDR.
A Czech underground cartoon celebrated the revolutions. Poles, Hungarians and East Germans had broken free. Now the Czechs tried to join them. Inspired by dissident playwright Václav Havel, huge crowds took over the capital every evening.
Zdravím jménem Občanského fóra i všechny občany, kteří nejsou zde na pražském Václavském náměstí a sledují nás prostřednictvím televize.
Petr Miller z ČKD.
After a chance meeting with Havel, the factory worker Petr Miller became the workers' representative in negotiations with the government.
We were amazed at the reaction of our opponents at meetings. Here was someone who had all that power at his disposal and could control everything. Suddenly this man was sitting opposite you. He was very small, and he didn't have an idea.
The Czech party leadership, without the threat of the Red Army to back them up, was floundering.
Sometimes even Havel didn't know what to do. When we got back, we'd locked the door and burst into hysterical laughter.
In 2 weeks, 40 years of communist rule was swept away.
Československá televize oznámila, že všichni členové předsednictva UVKSČ dávají své funkce k dispozici.
It was called the Velvet Revolution. But in Romania, nothing had changed. That winter, life was made up of desperate shortages, with daily power cuts and temperatures well below zero. In the same week as the revolution in Prague, Nicolae Ceausescu held a party congress. The faithful greeted him as they always did, and he rewarded them with a 6-hour speech.
The Communist Party and all the people of Romania are the same.
They responded with 67 standing ovations. No mention was made of the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Romanian press had never even reported it.
There was no information about what was going on in Eastern Europe. But here in Timișoara, we had a trump card. Through Yugoslav TV, we had news about the outside world.
Emboldened by what they knew had happened in Berlin and Prague, the people of Timișoara in western Romania were the first to dare to protest. Ion Savu, who worked in a local soap factory, found himself leading a rebellion.
For the first time in my life, I felt free. All over the place were the signs of the communist regime. Long live the Communist Party. Long live Comrade Ceausescu, the beloved leader. That day, we destroyed all those symbols of the party in Ceausescu.
Thousands gathered in the main square. Ion and Leontina Beancioi heard the demonstration outside.
Când a văzut că eu sunt așa hotărât să nu stau nici să termine mâncarea.
When she saw that I was determined to go out and not even finish the second course, she left the potatoes in the pot and decided to come with me.
As the march approached the bridge into the center of town, it became clear Ceausescu was not going to bow to the inevitable, like his German and Czech comrades.
There were troops with their weapons aimed at us. When the group approached, they opened fire without any warning. They shot with real bullets. People screamed in pain. My wife fell, clinging to my arm.
Au lovit-o cu un gloț în spate, exact prin inimă.
She was hit by one bullet in the back, straight through the heart. I thought she was still alive, but she died right there on the spot.
The slaughter went on as troops surrounded the city, but the defiance continued.
People realized there was no way back, and even if they killed us, others would carry on the fight.
In the capital, Bucharest, stories of the Timișoara Rising spread quickly. A rally was organized for Ceausescu to reassert control.
Aceste mari manifestări populare din București, considerând aceasta ca o
That night, Bucharest dissolved into chaos. Hundreds were killed. The people kept coming, and when the army deserted their leader, it was the turn of Ceausescu and his wife to flee.
Everyone had tears in their eyes. It was so emotional. That week meant I hadn't lived for nothing.
When the Ceausescus were caught, there was no mercy. With the executions of Ceausescu and his wife seen on television, an era of repression in Eastern Europe had come to an end.
Nu mai trage nimeni.
In the country where it had all begun, the Communist Party still held power. But Gorbachev's reforms had shaken the old certainties. Loyal party members at Moscow's first ball-bearing factory were bewildered by the changes at home and abroad.
I felt the ground slipping from under my feet. I cried tears of despair. How could this be happening? Maybe we communists did make mistakes. I'll even agree to that. But did they need to ruin everything? Not like that. It was our history.
A cartoon of the time told how destructive communism had been in the past, and how Gorbachev's attempts to reform the system had just brought disasters, economic breakdown, and civil war.
Заявляем чрезвычайное положение в отдельных местностях СССР на срок 6 месяцев.
With Gorbachev threatening everything they believed in, communist hardliners in the army and the KGB mounted a preemptive strike. Gorbachev was held prisoner as they sought to reimpose the old order. Sergei Yevdokimov led the tank brigade sent to the Russian parliament.
We saw people standing at bus stops, going to work. Their reaction varied. Some cried, some waved, some prayed. We had no idea what was going on, only that the commander had ordered us to Moscow.
But the leaders of the coup had miscalculated. One of a new breed of radical politicians, Boris Yeltsin, called on the people to fight back.
Имеем дело с правым реакционным антиконституционным переворотом.
The White House, where Yeltsin presided over the Russian parliament, became the center of resistance.
I realized I had to do something. All those new freedoms were at risk. We wouldn't be able to travel. Once again, we'd be behind an iron curtain. They wanted to break me again. But once you've tasted freedom, you can't do without it.
People began telling us what was going on, agitating, threatening us, crying and asking the soldiers, "Have you come to kill us?"
The troops were uncertain what to do. Major Yevdokimov, filmed on his tank, was contacted by Yeltsin's deputy.
He said, "The people who sent you are criminals." Then he asked, "Will you help us?" That was his key phrase. I knew what he meant. Would we defend Yeltsin's White House? I said, "Yes, I will."
Unwilling to turn their guns on their own people, the young soldiers were the first to disobey their commanders. The coup began to crumble.
Are you ready to die? I asked one, and he smiled and said yes. I stroked one, I kissed another. I embraced them as I went along. I began crying. The tears had begun earlier. There's a photo of me.
For 2 nights, the defenders waited for an attack that never came. The hardliners who'd led the coup had failed. And as they were swept away, they took Gorbachev and the whole Communist Party with them. Russia had a new hero in Boris Yeltsin. And for the first time in 70 years, the Russian national flag was unfurled at the Kremlin. All over the Soviet Union, people tore down the symbols of an ideology that had shaped so much of the 20th century. The people were asked to put their faith in new gods, democracy and capitalism.